Good day, everybody. Welcome to today's pre-recorded session. Today we are doing Learning Unit 2, and we're going to focus on Theme 1 as well as Theme 2. And the topics for Theme 1 and 2 is on Introduction to Sourcing, as well as Supplier Selection and Development. So I'm going to kick off today with the first part, which is strategic sourcing. And we'll start off with the definition. So strategic sourcing is the process that involves systematically analyzing an organization's purchasing needs and developing a comprehensive strategy to meet those needs in the most efficient and cost-effective manner. So very much unlike your traditional sourcing, which means you want to do any sort of short-term transactions, and your decision to choose a specific product is based on the price. Strategic sourcing takes a long-term holistic approach to procurement as compared to traditional sourcing. Your strategic sourcing includes supplier relationship management, which is basically building and maintaining your relationships with key suppliers so that you have a long-term collaboration and your suppliers are then reliable. So they're trustworthy whenever you do need them to go over and above the norm of the expectation. They are always there to do that. It also involves working closely with the suppliers so that you have better quality of your materials or product that they're manufacturing. You can see a reduction in cost because with better quality, less defects, you are able to then have full production of quantity of shipments or quantity of products. And then you also have a very driven innovation. So if there is any technological changes or innovation that's in the market, either from a local or a global perspective, your supplier is able to have that open conversation with you because of the long-term relationship and partnership that you share. Total cost of ownership, or your TCO, it's considering not just what the purchase price of the product is, but also any of the associated costs like logistics, any maintenance that's required to be done, disposal of any products that has to happen, to basically understand the true cost over the entire life cycle of the specific product. Market analysis, so understanding where the supplier is sitting in terms of the market. Also understanding what is the forces of supply as well as demand so that you can make good decisions when it comes to finding a good or selecting a good supplier, so sourcing a good product from a good supplier. It can include evaluating some political or potential risks in the market, such as whether your supplier is stable or not. And it always goes back into doing your market research on the specific supplier and an in-depth research like, what is their balance sheet looking like? Are they a public or private listed company? Are their financials listed? Can you see where they're sitting at in terms of revenue, their profitability, and their balance sheet, as well as their cash flow? Any geopolitical factors and any market trends. Then it's spend analysis, so reviewing the historic spending data to understand whether there's any opportunities for cost savings, like if you're consolidating specific suppliers, maybe a supplier does multiple items, but you need the multiple items, but you're using multiple suppliers to source those multiple items. So now just consolidating it as one, so you do have a reduced rate because you're getting an economies of scale. You then can negotiate better terms. So instead of you paying your supplier in 30 days, you can then pay your supplier in 60 days, whereas you get revenue from your customer in 30, and then you can pull your supplier on for the further payment terms. Or basically switching to alternative materials or services. But having that strong relationship with your supplier will be able to tell you what works for your product or service and what doesn't work for them. Risk management is identifying any potential risks in the supply chain, and then how do you now develop strategies to mitigate them? What contingency plans can you make? And also you can negotiate better flexible contracts with those specific suppliers. And the last one is sustainability and ethics. So ensuring that your sourcing decisions are aligned with the organization's values, including sustainability, any ethical sourcing, and CSR, so your corporate social responsibility. With integrating these elements, your strategic sourcing basically helps an organization to optimize their supply chain, how you can then reduce costs within your supply chain, um, and improve the quality and reliability of your goods. Okay, so that basically sums up strategic sourcing in a little bit of a nutshell. And it's just to understand that strategic sourcing is a long-term effect. Strategic sourcing is where you have to form a relationship with, from a procurement perspective, you have to form a relationship with suppliers or multiple suppliers, so that they become an element of your business or a partner of your business in order for you to basically experience all of the benefits like better quality, reduced cost, consolidation. So all of that then would contribute towards the final product being a better product for the consumer. Okay, then we have outsourcing. Okay, so it's basically your make or buy sort of decisions. So making being, you're physically making or manufacturing, and then buying being from an outsourcing perspective. Um, so what are some of the drivers in terms of both of these? So outsourcing is buying your material components from suppliers instead of making them in-house. Basically, outsourcing is a process of contracting out a business process that you may have performed internally previously to now sending it off to an external provider or an independent organization so they can, focus on, so you can actually focus on what your core business is. Um, the trend of moving towards more of an outsourced approach, um, it's combined with creation of different supply chain relationships. Traditional firms prefer the make option, so outsourcing is completely out the door. Whereas more of your functional businesses right now are doing a hybrid approach, meaning that they are outsourcing a portion of it and making a portion of the product. So, for example, an end product manufacturer acquiring a supplier's operation that supplied some sort of component part is an example of a backward integrated, whereas acquiring a distributor or other outbound logistics provider can be an example of a forward integration. And this is the difference between outsourcing and manufacturing or making. So to make a decision on whether you want to make a product or buy a product or outsource a product, it's a very strategic decision that a business has to take because it impacts where you sit from a competition perspective within the market. So a business would have to determine from that perspective where they're sitting and where they would like to be, understand the cost factor, the cost differences, and then take it forward. So some of the drivers from an insourcing perspective, or an outsourcing perspective, sorry, is number one is a cost consideration. So cost is obviously one of the most important reasons for outsourcing a particular material, a component, or a service, especially for supplies and components that are not very essential to the business's daily operations and competitive advantage. So it's like I work in a logistics function, and I now decide that I want to do landscaping, with the people that work within my environment. I want them to do landscaping of the business or of the office or the office park. That's not our core business. So we outsource that to a business that actually does, do the landscaping and the gardening, etc. It's common for basically for products that are either standardized or more generic, for which the suppliers may have an advantage in terms of what the economies of scale would be because they supply the same item to various different users. So somebody that has a competitive advantage and it is their core competency within the business, they would thrive to, make the item for somebody else. So a business can outsource an item to them for them to gain economies of scale. There's a huge cost factor from a cost saving that you'd benefit from that perspective. Limited facilities. So some businesses have a lack of production capacity because they don't have facilities that can cater towards it. So therefore, they push it over to an outsourcing function. This can happen when a demand for a specific item grows faster than was anticipated, or when you think that you can expand your limited facility, but it actually fails. And you're not able to meet the demand of the product. So the business basically buys parts or components to free up the capacity in a short-term space, so that they can focus on what their core business is. If it's managed properly, if you subcontract instead of buying, it's more effective, means to expand short-term capacity, because the buying firm can obviously exert some sort of better control over the manufacturing process for the components of those products. Lack of expertise. If the users want to take advantage of specialized abilities or research efforts from suppliers, they may be able to outsource or buy the products or components from somebody else. You may not have the necessary technology or the necessary skilled workers to actually physically manufacture the item on your own as an organization, therefore the reason to be outsourced. Core business, I think it's self-explanatory. If it's not what your primary activity of your organization is, in order for you to get some sort of revenue, then it is a strategic decision to outsource that element. Quality, a business may also take advantage of suppliers who have better innovation, better technology, maybe an automated system, skilled labor, better economies of scale to have a better cost of the product. If all of these tick the boxes, then outsourcing is the way to go. Okay, some of the drivers for making meaning making internally or in-house. If you have suppliers that's unreliable, if your shipments or your products, components start arriving late, it's incomplete, it's damaged, you have to constantly follow up, communication is lacking, then it probably is a better option to pull this idea in-source as opposed to outsourced. There's cases even within the logistics or the service industry where, for instance, if I'm in the logistics industry and I outsource a specific area of delivery to an outsourced agent, and they fulfill these deliveries. And then over time, I see that I'm getting a lot of complaints. I'm not getting PODs. I'm not getting documents. Communication's really bad. Then I decide to insource it. That's basically what, insourcing or drivers of making is, to put it more into perspective and more from a logistics perspective. Protect your proprietary technology. So a lot of businesses, they invest a lot of money in technology so that they can improve their processes. And so it's necessary that they protect that sort of technology. Also, people have, specific trends, specific stereos that they use when they're manufacturing a specific product or item. They want to protect that. They don't want it going out to an outsourced agent for them to actually, outsource it or reveal it to a competitor. So the advantage of not revealing the technology is that you're able to surprise your competition and bring new products into the market ahead of your competitors. And you can also charge a premium price for it because it is a niche product. Okay, design secrecy. It basically is when, few of your organizations, they make certain parts or components primarily because they want to keep it a secret, or keep it a secret as part of the design or manufacturing process. So it's no point in outsourcing that equipment or that specific component. It's better to insource it. Using idle capacity. So idle capacity is basically when you have staff or resources that are standing still. So it's obviously costing you money as an organization. So making full use of them from a short-term perspective. And it's valuable for the firm, especially when it comes to if you have products that is very seasonal. So in seasons only are you busy, maybe at the beginning of a season, but it may not be consistently throughout the year. So it's making use of them, especially for those sort of products. Lack of competent suppliers. So if, for instance, your product or part or component does not exist, or the suppliers do not have, the technology or the capability or the capacity to even produce it, they may have no choice from a business perspective than to make it in-house. Sometimes suppliers aren't competent to make certain products or materials. Therefore, as a business, if we want it, we're going to have to make it ourselves. Better quality product. If the firm is capable, the make option allows for more of a direct control over the design as well as the manufacturing process, your labors, inputs, anything else. So you need something that's more efficient. You will be able to control a lot of the quality when it comes to you keeping it from an in-house perspective. Okay. To basically select a supplier, you would need to evaluate the supplier suitability. So there's different factors that one can speak towards. Number one is your product and your processing. And sorry, just give me 1 minute. Number one is your product and your process technologies. Basically, your suppliers should have, and when you talk about supplier selection, you want to be able to have a checklist where you can evaluate whether obviously your supplier is suitable for manufacturing that type of product for you, how much of it can they do, how thoroughly is it used, etc. And some of the points is product and process technologies. Your suppliers should have up-to-date and capable products and technologies to be able to produce products that you want. So that's how you're going to select a supplier. Basically, he needs to be able to do what he promises that that he can do. Willingness to share technology and information. Basically, with like the current trend that favors more outsourcing so that you can exploit suppliers' capabilities and you can focus on core competencies as a manufacturer or a business, it's very important that businesses look for suppliers that are willing to share their technologies and information. So best practices basically shared, and then it can be adopted in various different organizations. Quality, so obviously quality levels of the item should be a very important factor in the supplier selection process. It also should be, a product quality should be high, it should be consistent, you shouldn't have any room for defects. It needs to be something that is improving all the time. Cost, while the unit cost of the material is not typically like the sole criteria for choosing a specific supplier, the total cost of ownership is important. So your TCO, what is your payment terms, your discounts, your material, your ordering costs, your carrying costs, your maintenance costs, your logistics costs. So basically all of the costs, and we sort of call it landed costs when we're importing, that is the cost that we need to take into account or keep abreast, and not just the per unit cost. Reliability, so you obviously want a supplier that is reliable in terms of quality as well as reliable in terms of their whole characteristics. So if they're financially stable, you know that they will be able to invest in what you invest in. From a research and development perspective, are they lead times reliable? Can they deliver on time? Is the quality reliable? Do they have a shortage of or stoppage of production because they have a shortage of material? So we need to understand that there are people or suppliers that will have continuous improvement at all times. Order system and cycle time. How easy is it to basically order a specific material or component via your supplier's ordering process? What is the normal order cycle time? Is it quick? Is it easy? Is it reliable? Is it effective? So it's asking these sort of questions because you don't want to go through an order system or a cycle time order system process that is long, and especially if you're rushing to order a specific product, you need something that's going to be quick, easy, and simple to use. Capacity, does the supplier have the capacity to fulfill all of your orders, to meet the requirements that you set out, and able to fill large orders when peak time hits? So you're able to get a supplier that is very sustainable, someone that can look at very scalable solutions as well. So turn on high volumes when it's required and turn off when it's not required. Communication. So they should also have communication capabilities so that there's clear communication between both supplier, organization, and vice versa. Location, so geographic location is also very important. It impacts your delivery lead time, your cycle time, your transportation, logistics cost, everything in between. So you need to consider where your supplier is situated. Is it a global supplier? If it is, we need to take landed costs and freight cost into account. If it's a local supplier, where is the supplier located? Is it a courier charge? Is it a full truckload charge? What is that logistics cost? And then lastly, it's service. The suppliers must be able to back up their products by providing a good service when it is required. For example, when the product information or the warranty or anything else, something happens, then you're able to quickly kick off. Okay, let's go on. Okay, the next one is KPIs. And part of your KPIs is you need to select a supplier according to your performance evaluation matrix, etc. It's critical in terms of finding a supplier that's good enough. So how do you now measure your supplier and how do you now monitor your supplier? So number one is the cost factor. So from a price competitive perspective, the supplier's pricing compared to their competitors. The TCO, so the total cost of ownership, it's not only the price, but it's everything in between, the maintenance costs, logistics costs, handling costs, transport costs, etc. And then payment terms. Are they flexible in terms of payment terms? Do they have favorable payment terms? Are we going into like the 60, 90 days, 120 days payment terms? Quality factors. So we need to look at product quality. Is it consistent? Is it reliable? Is there minimum defects or zero defects? Any sort of certification, is it ISO accredited? Is it a 9001 or any other industry certificate that's related to your specific business or industry? And then inspection and testing, which is the robustness of the supplier's quality control processes. Delivery performance, on-time delivery, so the supplier's ability to meet delivery schedules consistently. Lead time, the time that it takes for the supplier to deliver the goods and services after an order is placed. And flexibility, the supplier's ability to accommodate changes in your order quantity or your delivery schedule. Capacity and capability. So it's more from a production capacity perspective. Are they able to meet your current volumes and any future volumes? And then from a capability perspective, it's more from a technical. Can they meet, do they have the expertise and ability to meet any sort of technical requirements and innovations? Financial stability. What is the financial health of the business, financial statements, credit ratings, and just overall, what is their balance sheet looking like? And do they run a risk of bankruptcy? So you need to evaluate that sort of likelihood, as you're monitoring their performance. Compliance and risk management. So from a regulatory compliance perspective, Are they adhering to legal requirements, local laws, labor laws, environmental laws, occupational health and safety? And then risk management can the supplier needs to be able to identify and mitigate any sort of risks. Is there any supply chain disruptions? Economic instability that he or she foresees. Sustainability and CSR, so corporate social responsibility. So from a sustainability perspective, it's what is the supplier's commitment to environmental sustainability? Are they using eco-friendly processes, eco-friendly materials? From an ethical side, do they have fair labor conditions? Are they paying minimum wage? Are they responsible? Are they doing responsible sourcing of raw materials? And then also from a CSR side, what is their engagement in social initiatives and any sort of community development? Innovation and continuous improvement, the supplier's ability to innovate and offer new or improved products and services, and then continuous improvement in terms of Lean or Six Sigma, any continuous improvement that they have initiated within their business. Relationship management, so communication, a really big deal. So there needs to be transparency between the business and the supplier. Cultural fit, do they fit in with does the supplier's values and missions and visions fit in with what your business values and missions and visions and culture is? And then geographic consideration. So the proximity to the buyer's location, your lead times, your logistics times, your ease of communication. And just from a reliability in terms of the supply chain, is their supply chain then reliable? Okay, then we move on to the role of the supplier base. So basically, the supplier base is a list of suppliers that a firm uses to get all of its materials, services, suppliers, and any sort of equipment, to say the least. And single sourcing basically is where you're using a single supplier. So you want to be able to establish a good relationship with them because it's only one supplier that you're using, so that you have a mutually beneficial, alliance with each other. And then from a single sourcing perspective, you also have less quality variability because there's the same product, same technology, same processes to produce that specific component or part. Whereas your quality varies less if the parts are purchased from multiple suppliers. So you have a little bit more consistency in terms of your quality. Lower costs when you're buying, you have economies of scale. When you have economies of scale, you have a lower purchase price per unit. Transport economies, you can take full reign of FTLs, so full truckloads or even LTLs, which is less than a truckload, as opposed to moving smaller quantities from a courier perspective to yourself from multiple suppliers. And then proprietary product or process purchases. If it is a proprietary product or a process, if the supplier holds the patent to that product or process, the business has no choice but to buy from that only person or sole source. And we do have many of those in South Africa right now, where it's a single source supplier that's holding a patent or holding a trademark of a specific item. So the volume is too small to split. If your requirement is fairly small, then it's not worthwhile to split the order. So it basically makes more sense for you to keep the order with a single source supplier as opposed to splitting it. So then we move on to multiple suppliers. And this, it says it in the name itself, it's having multiple suppliers and not just one single supplier. So some of the benefits of having a multiple supplier is the capacity. So when your demand exceeds the capacity of a single supplier, the business can use multiple sources. And that's probably one of the reasons why they would opt to use multiple sources. You're sparing the risk of supply interruptions. When you have multiple sources, the business is able to spread the risk of supply interruptions. Like if a business goes on strike, there's quality problems, there's political instability or other supplier problems. Like when it was COVID, different businesses went through different problems. I mean, if one business had a lot of infections and another had less infections, the business with a lot of infections may close down. Where does that leave businesses who have them as a single source supplier? Therefore, people have become a lot more open-minded, sort of post-COVID, so they can spread the risk a little bit more, and they don't keep all of the eggs in one basket, basically. Create competition. When you're using multiple sources, you encourage competition, basically, among suppliers in terms of what the price is, the quality is, etc. And then lastly is information. So multiple suppliers usually have more information about market conditions. So you're not focusing purely on one specific supplier. When there's new product developments in the market, even if it's from a global space, sometimes suppliers do travel a little bit more. They're able to have extensive knowledge on other industries outside of the current country that you're sitting in. So it's nice to understand where that information is coming from. Okay, and then the last one is basically the actual sourcing process. And if you read this, it'll basically identify exactly where you're sitting with in terms of how can you now source a supplier. So number one is identify your needs or reevaluate your needs. As a business, you need to understand what you require in terms of from a supplier that you source. Define or reevaluate your users' requirements. Decide whether you are making or you're buying. So are you outsourcing? What are you outsourcing? Insourcing? What are you insourcing? Identify the type of purchases, do a market analysis based on that. Identify a host of possible suppliers, pre-screen them, go through a tender process, go through an RFQ, RFP, evaluate the remaining supplier base. So whoever has been shortlisted, basically, choose your supplier, deliver product or perform your service, and then you do a post-purchase. So it's like running a complete RFQ process. You identify a few suppliers that can actually do the job. They're able to tell you what their sort of solutions are, what their attributes are, value adds, etc. What is the price per unit that they're giving? What is their business continuity plan? Based on that, you identify a few suppliers and you basically onboard those few suppliers and they become your multiple sourcing suppliers. If you identify only one single supplier to get the benefit of quality and get the benefit of economies of scale, then you identify your single sourcing supplier. So that closes off theme 1 and 2. Theme 3, we're going to do it as a live lecture on the 3rd of September at 6 p.m. I just want to talk a little bit on the exams or the assignment 1 at the same time. ISTAS 2 released on the 3rd of September as well. Due date is on the 10th of September. And we'll kick off theme 3 on the 3rd of September, and from the 17th onwards, I think we are more or less in line in terms of everything that we need to do. Thank you so much, and chat to you guys soon.